staying tuned. We're back now. So, where were we? Give me a second. Let's be sure folks on YouTube are here. Okay, YouTube is streaming now. That's very good. On Facebook as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Please like the live. By the way, while we're getting this sorted, if you're on TikTok, please like the live. Let's like and share. So please like the live. Let's also click on the heart icon up here and drop a heart to me. Let's drop gifts. Let's drop, good stuff that will help push the live to the FYP. So I said the final news item is what I'm about to read. We'll do that and then we'll bring some people up. Then we'll get to today's topic. I know it's taking a while. It's Monday, so we had a lot of things to cover. It happens like that every Monday. I mean, most Mondays. So comes with the territory. All right. 1 second. I'm just gonna be sure we're good on YouTube, and then we can. Oh dear, one more thing. Someone says, meanwhile, Kano is in Kula chilling. All right, so here's the thing, right? You have these subtle, jabs, right? And like I talked about it last week, people say that it's just comedy, it's just fun, it's just a joke. Anyway, it's taking a life of its own now, and you have a blog that a lot of people actually, get their information from. For some weird reason, decided to post this. I think this was yesterday, and this is what they said. I mean, Pulse Nigeria, that's not the blog. It says, if I'm sleeping and I hear the Yorubas beating the drums of war, I would go back to sleep. President Ibrahim Babangida, after annulling the June 12 presidential elections. Now, first of all, that did not happen. But for people who are committed to just sharing propaganda or spreading propaganda, they wouldn't care about the veracity or whatever claim. They don't care about whether it's true or wrong. It's just that it flows with their propaganda, so they will share it. It's actually quite sad that polls will be the ones. So apparently, you might as well just say that they are affiliated with IPOP thinking, or just essentially I almost said a Yoruba hate organization, but I think it's more than that. 1 second. Something is different. It's not really about Yoruba hate. It's more about people. I mean, it's what it is. But here's the thing. It's something that people have been talking about for a bit, and it's quite popular. But I want to do just one thing. I want to listen to exactly where that information came from, that statement. Who made that statement? Because the person was quoting President Ibrahim Babangida. The first person who actually made the statement, or who made the statement popular. Excuse me. All right. So the person who made the statement popular, and what the person actually said, unlike what these clowns, including those who are the handlers of that website, what they said. So this is what, by the way, the person is Oladipo Dia, General Oladipo Dia, and this was at Oputa panel. This is what he actually said. Take a listen to this.
The quotation of General Babangida. The quotation of General Babangida in one of the magazines, and he has never denied it, so I believe he said it. He said that if he had that Dia was planning the coup, he would go to sleep. And if he now had that Adisa is planning the coup, he will go to slumber. He knew what he was saying, because he knew that none of us were.
We have that tender. You think it's relevant?
Yes, Lord, can you get a copy of that particular publication?
I will look for it, sir. It's a retail magazine. It was there in quotes. If I hear that.
You have it in your possession?
Yes, I will.
Not here now.
Not here now.
Lord, I will produce it subsequently. But what? Let us see exactly.
I'm on my way to you, that's
Quotation is very important.
Babangida said, if he heard that Dia is planning a coup, he will go against the nation, whatever, he will go to sleep. And if he now heard that Adisa is planning a coup, he will go into slumber. You see, the quotation is just to show you.
Just hold on. I would like you to explain to us, we are not generals, what meaning does that confound members of the people who are not in the army?
What that quotation is implying is to expose our incompetence, our inability to even contemplate a coup, not talk of executing it. You know, if you look at the structure of the army today, I will see, without any fear of contradiction, how many Southerners are in position to command troops. That is the truth. We are still talking, we are still calling for restructuring. We are talking for solving national conference. These are part of the problems.
That was the original statement. It was General Ladipo quoting General Ibrahim Babangida about what the former said about them, or about what the latter said about them, about himself and General Adisa. Has nothing to do with Yoruba people beating the drums of war. We're talking about the ability of his officers to organize a coup. And he mentioned those officers, and it was published, according to General Dia, in Tel magazine. Specific officers. If I hear that this officer is planning a coup, I'll just go and sleep. If I hear this other officer, so if I hear that Dia is planning a coup, I'll go and sleep. If I hear that Adisa is planning a coup, I'll go to slumber. That has nothing to do with Yoruba people drumming, beating drums of war. This is something that I've seen different people say it over time. Normally it's online, so just one of those things. I think we have to take some of those things serious. Why? Because there's something called digital footprint. And it's also something you notice with Grok. Sometimes Grok actually tells you what, folks have fed it over time. It's important to create an alternative. And in this case, the truth, which is actually the alternative, because the people who are feeding, the world with lies, they don't care about the truth. They just care about their own agenda. So it's important to make it very clear that it has nothing to do with Yoruba people. And what he actually said about Yoruba people was that he was afraid that there was going to be a civil war after the annulment of the election in 1993. That's what Ibrahim Babangida said. He did not say that Yoruba people were going to they want to do war, and to have certain platforms actually push that kind of narrative, and they're the ones that will come to you and now say, how did we get here? Just a bunch of bigots pushing bigotry, now shouting at people when they turn it back at them. Just give you a mirror, you are crying, but people are going to cry for a very long time, because nobody's just going to be taking things blind because we have a president who is Yoruba. He's your president of everybody in Nigeria. He's your president. Yoruba is not your president. Yoruba is not the one that will now you'll be using to drag the floor like your father's, whatever. So it's important for us to make these things very, very clear. And I'm sure people are already getting it. And the ones who are crying, they still have how many more years? 2031, 5 years? Maybe even much longer, who knows? because I mean, there's going to be a Hausa person that will still cry. There's going to, sorry, nothing now. Hopefully, will come after Tinubu. People will still cry. So it's like you create a nation and then you decide, or you create a country, I should say, and then you choose one group as the one that's always crying about everything. It's quite interesting. All right, we'll bring some people up now, and then we'll go to the topic later. All right. Oh, I didn't want to click on user. That was a mistake. But you are here now, so hello.
Hello.
No. One second, Mr. Fola. User, hello. The person is always sending requests, but they never speak. But to be honest, I don't like bringing people up without a name, Sha, but somehow you came up, but you didn't say anything. So let's have Fola. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, sir. I want to thank you very much for relaying the news to us. I'll just like to address some things. Number one, on the last point you said, you see, this thing has been subtle for about, let's say, 20, 25 years. And somebody like Sheyi Law had also made a joke about it. It was, I remember the night of 1,000 laugh. It was a spectacle. Yes. It was a spectacle they used to make of Yoruba people that, oh, any small thing, a Yoruba man is always afraid. Have you heard the joke about them coming to rob a Yoruba man's house and he gave them everything and he called the thief back to go and take the remaining things that was in his room? There was one that Sheyi Law himself made about him running somewhere and the Yoruba man ran after him and he said, "Where are you going?" The Yoruba man said, Benny, be careful. And you know why this, and I'd always been annoyed anytime, I never like it. And I used to make a point about it. The fact is that, I'm sorry to go back to history on this, but people that defeated them greatly were the Yorubas. Benjamin Adekule, General Alabi, Godwin Alabi Sama, Olusegun Obasanjo, Alani Akinrinade. Most of them were of Yoruba extraction, and they went at them. Even in the engineering corps, the places they have to build, it was Yoruba men that stood for Nigeria. We had lots of them. Sharusa.
No.
Oh, there's a book of Debo Bashorun used to be Babangida's PRO. I'll check it out.
Please continue. If I find it, I'll ask. Okay,
yes. So Debo Bashorun said during the war that what made him go to the war is that he said he went to a party in Lagos and a soldier came to harass them, and he said he decided to go and join the military. That was why they went to. He said him and his friends just said, let's go and join the army, and it was so easy to join the army. It was in the 60s during the war, and he said when they went to the depot at Abeokuta and Ibadan and they trained them, he said they saw a man that just came back from war. He said everybody was in awe of him, and he took his rifle and started heading towards Benin. He said he wanted to go to war. That that is the bravery of an average Yoruba man. The fact that we don't like to cause unnecessary trouble it speaks to our civilization. You understand? That we look at you that tabani kaba inja. Seriously. Because as you used to say, that it will not be these people speaking English with you that will enter you. We are speaking English now. Go there, logbo.
Go
logbo, come. Secondly, there's this one that pains me the most, and I would like you to, if you have the time, or maybe you can do a session of it. The hatred for the present president. Now, by the grace of God, I was born in Lagos, and if I tell you I'm a Lagosian to the core. I did not grow up in one local government in Lagos. You understand? I lived at least in 4 different local governments. So we moved from place to place to place. So I understand Lagos and I saw Lagos. I went to Lagos State schools in boarding house. And when I came back to Lagos, I went to a Jakonde constructed school. And I understand what happened in 1999 because I was in secondary school almost finishing at the time. And I knew the reforms that came into secondary school when this man came in. There is a road he did. If you there is one of the flagship roads he did, the Kudura Tabiola Way. That road is so exemplary. That road was done and it was not patched for 25 years. You understand? Lots of things he did. The recovery of Babbage. I remembered when we were kids, we used to go and play in Babbage, and before the military left, Babbage had already gotten to Ahmadu Bello Way. And I just want to know why this hatred. And I'm not saying the hatred amongst I don't care for their own hatred. But why amongst our own kith and kin? You understand? Why? Where did it come from? What started it? So I don't know if you can just speak to that, or maybe you can do a session on that, or you understand, so that we'll just understand it. That why would they? Now, we understood why they hated Baba, at least to the best of our knowledge. Baba loved himself and he loved his own. You understand? And Baba did not let them take him for granted in any way, shape, or form. But the thing is that this one gave them a chance at the table. He always brought them to the table. You cannot talk of the great bankers that are not of Yoruba extraction in Nigeria today. He was the one that brought them to the table. So why? Where did this hatred, or where does it stem from? That they just completely hate the man. I don't get it. If you can speak to that. Well, all in all, I would just like to say thank you very much for your sessions. God bless you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I really appreciate your submission, sir. God bless you. 1 second, though. Someone's saying something in the comment section. I'm going to... bro. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fola. God bless you. Okay. So, let's begin. I think there are 2 questions, right? So let me just try and, say what I think you meant. So on one hand, you're talking about folks from the Southeast who hate the president. On the other hand, you're talking about people from our own group, or some Yoruba people. I think that's even reduced, shall Yoruba people have some funny things against the president. All right, so someone wrote it's not about Funshaw Williams. It's not about Funshaw Williams. And when you say there's a faction of Funshaw Williams, Funshaw was not even in AD. That's another matter. But let's just talk about this. So number 1, those who hate him from the East, they hate him because he won instead of their brother. That's it. Okay, that's it. They wanted Peter Obi to win. They did everything. They prayed and cursed and insulted and begged and bullied and everything. Their own did not win. And I remember that Oro Ilarani Ijalara Tomboro Ijalare and June Ijalara on Tomboro. So that one is because it just would not make them, For the Yoruba people say it's not about Funshaw Williams and I'll tell you what I think. Then those want to talk about. I don't want to go deep into Funshaw Williams because if I go, I think is the reason to answer that question. I think, and if you think I'm wrong, please feel free to come up and then you can explain what you think or how you think I'm wrong. I think that after what happened in 2003, where AD lost 5 governors. I mean, we lost 5 states and had only one. I think that, number one, it was the last man standing, and then he did something that was unbelievable, and it got to a point, to be honest. My branch is Meji. It got to a point when, number one, he began to do things that he couldn't be curbed, because it was no longer there. That party did not exist any longer. So the people that you will look up to, looking at the progressives and looking at the lineage, so to speak, of Papa, and those people, they didn't have so much on him because he was just on his own, and they had to now create AC, and then from AC to ACN, and then to APC. So essentially, that flow of authority, in my opinion, they couldn't just bash him, because it wasn't really, nobody really helped to stabilize anything in Lagos. It was just on their own. That was one. Oh, sorry, just on his own. I also think, and this one is a bit controversial, that there are people who expected certain things to run according to that lineage. And then there was actually a particular time when it looked as if folks were elevating Asiwaju to Papa's level. And it began with, well, in my opinion, one of those things I think has to do with the title itself. So Asiwaju was a title that Papa got after he got out of prison in 1966. Okay? Asiwaju of Yoruba, not from Awolowo. Nígbà tó wá di pé ọ̀yàn bẹ́ẹ̀ àpéjọpọ̀. Wait, one by one. This was before Fashion Tea. This was before Fashion Tea. Tí wọ́n fẹ́ ṣe àpéjọpọ̀ ńgbà yẹn, tí wọ́n fẹ́ ṣe àwọn bíi March 6 event ní Ọbáfẹ́mi Awólọ́wọ̀ Foundation, wọ́n máa lo logo. Sometimes I think explanation is too deep. Most of the people that hate him today aren't deep into politics. Okay, maybe I should stop, because what I'm about to say actually I think it might be unnecessarily deep. So let's just leave it alone. But I think that since I already started saying it, I'll just end by saying that I think some people started putting it on the pedestal, and some people thought it was disrespectful or maybe even blasphemous to the legacy of Awo. And how that plays out, let's leave it for today. But some of the things that people are writing out there, that maybe Azul Funshaw Williams, maybe he did. Sorry. And what you say about Fashion Tea, that also happened as well. But you notice that at that time, Afenifere was not with APC like that. So the question you should be asking yourself, it's not even about the Fashion Tea, which is a terrible, tragedy, what happened to the daughter. But that's not even so I'm talking to you now. What you should think about is, why was Afenifere not part of APC, or why was President Sumbu in APC while Afenifere was not really, supporting APC like that? If you notice during Buhari's regime, they somehow supported, but not like that. So the question should be, kilo fatun won se ton se pẹ̀lú Aṣíwájú sọ́dọ̀ ọ̀dọ̀ APC. Someone says he left AD for ACN. He didn't leave AD. Tinubu has never changed the party. AD died a natural death. AD was in 6 states, and after 2003 election, only 1 state was standing. That party, that's the structure of that party, was what became AC. It wasn't like he left and joined ACN. No, it was that structure that became AC, and AC became ACN, and ACN, went to coalition with CPC and NPDP at the time, and they created the APC. Dr. Badru says Afenifere wanted a party with command and control with them. Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Somebody said it was too deep. that structure to walati lineage, because if you think about it, if you want to really discuss Yoruba politics, you can do that lineage up until 2003. That's where it stopped. Before Afenifere now, gain more power. Again, maybe I'm getting too pedantic, but the point is, if you go through Papa from 51 action group to the UPN days with governors in Ondo had Ajasin, Oyo had Chibola Ige, Ogun had Chibola Bisonabanjo, Edo had Ambrose Ali. So that generation from there, that's Edo, I meant Bendel, sorry. And then from that place, you now had, in the 1990s, the leader, Ajasin, then you had other people, other leaders, Banjo and the rest of them. But you have that Kini coming. So by the time you get to around 99, 2003, OT could follow pattern. So I think that some people were not comfortable with that. But that's over now, to be fair, because Afenifere is now fully backing him, and that's quite nice. Someone said the death of Bola Ige and Bramade Sonia also created a gap which needed to be filled. Absolutely. And it's funny that, to be honest, since Bola Ige should have been the one, interestingly, not that we are talking about it, Bola Ige was supposed to be the one to lead. He chose not to. A lot of people wanted him. There's a book by Dari Babarinsa, Chief Mapo, and I've been Mr. Dari Baba, because is one of those. They would have been the generation after them, Bola Ige. They said that a lot of them wanted Bola Ige as the chairman of Afenifere. But Bola Ige was like, because Tomba Long got lati bere ati baba dori Ajasin dori, that better ko jẹ́ tó dàgbà jù. So they chose Bramade Sonia instead of him. So he probably would have been the person. But the truth of the matter is that we don't have that strong man, like the focal point since Bramade Sonia and Bola Ige passed. If Bola Ige was not assassinated, it would have been the next one, and it would have been a lot easier because he had a lot of young Turks who gravitated towards him at the time, So essentially, what's happening is that Tinubu just came from nowhere. I mean, it's not from nowhere, to be fair, because it was in Adeco and everywhere. But the point is, if you look at the organogram and the structure and everything, you saw balance in it. But that did not happen because he wanted to do it. It happened, in my opinion, it goes back to what happened in 2003. You had only one guy, one state, and what they were trying to do with Southwest was similar to what Papa did with UPN, when all of them had the same policy: free education, free healthcare, whether you're in Ondo or Lagos, or I didn't mention Lagos earlier. Lateef Jakonde Babakekere was the governor of Lagos, while Bola Ige was in Oyo State, and I just Ondo State, and Olabisi Onabanjo was in Ogun State, and Ambrose Ali was in Bendel State. So they had the uniform policy. So they're doing the exact same thing with AD before what happened. And now that, and it was Obasanjo's strategy. He told them that they should work with him at the federal level and have a presidential candidate, PDP, Obasanjo. But at the local level, at the state level, they should do AD. By the time they got to local level, what they did was to change everything. Oh, sorry. The user that has been coming here is actually an evil guy. This is why I don't bring them up. Oh. See what you wrote in the comment section. Yeah, retard. Somebody should tell you. I'm telling you. I thought you were a sensible person. Well, thank you for showing yourself. You always sleep. Where was I? Anyway, that's my own theory. The other part that has to do with what happened with lifting up to that pedestal. Maybe we leave it for another day. But it's my observation from what I've seen. The one about Funshaw Williams, I think people just say it. There's nothing concrete about it. And the question is, was it really a threat to Funshaw? Well, they were not even in the same party. Funshaw Williams was in PDP, if my memory serves me right. It was in PDP. Ashwaju was in AD. Did they not have an issue with their primaries in PDP at the time? The details are a bit fuzzy right now, but maybe I'll read about it the next time I'll talk about it. It says, what do you think that most of these hates are coming from Yoruba land? Let me tell you one funny thing. I should even say this now. Hopefully I will not say anything. You see, a few years ago, some people were... I made a mistake. That user guy, I should not have muted him. I should have blocked him. Seeing what the person just wrote right now. Let me just read some of the things that you have written in the comment section. Someone says he formed AC and left AD to go into extinction because it still existed after AC was formed. If you say so. I think they tried to resuscitate it. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you are right. I know they tried to resuscitate it, but structure into collapse. Obasanjo was very, very strategic. They found his way into the southwest. Let me read some of your comments before I tell you what I hope I remember. I will remember. You might say that's the same problem Chief Bolage had with them in respect to 1999 presidential ticket that he lost to Chief Olufalaye. Yes. Sherry, I mean, Oromini. So I would like to read the book out. You know why? See, there are some statements that are heavy that I think it's important to read the account of participants or eyewitnesses. And a very, very good example. I mean, there are two books I would recommend if you're sitting on the Nigerian the Keg of Gunpowder by Victor Taiwo, and I know the author Dari Babarinsa. I can see the book, but I can't see the name in my head now. It's on the shelf. Dari Babarinsa. I think we're going to have a conversation about it, but I'd like to read what they have to say so that we're not just talking. Going to be conjectures. It should be like we're reading what happened. That's a better way to learn. Right? Because on the time Bola again last skinny and all the time Bola again. After that, she no. Mashio. Babarinsa actually went deep talking about what happened. The man I'm calling Dari Babarinsa is not young, but he's in the 70s or so. He's like they were there. And he mentioned the place. It wasn't Ibadan, it was a ring road where some meetings were held. House of War. Thank you, DJ TY. Thank you. House of War. Dari Babarinsa. The book is, maybe, you know what? It's just like, let's do this way. Very soon, let's pray for me. Once we get the place sorted, it will be easy for me to just pick a book and then I'll just get it. Because if I start up now, it will affect everything we're doing. But we're going to get to books like that, read it together, see what happened. I don't like mentioning some things, but let me. It's better, I know that we're there, but only that these are 70-year-olds. They know what happened. We'll read their report. Okay, but imagine that. Well, I don't know. Even if Bolage had drawn, maybe he would have still lost to Olusegun Obasanjo. But if you think about it, in his generation, he was the one. Ilara Inoni. I mean, I don't know about you, but he had people that were great people in his generation. Every generation has great people, though. But I think that in Bolage's generation, he was the man. He was an orator. He had shown what he could do as governor of your state. So what exactly, Ilaran? ẹ kí n ka àwọn kọkọ tẹ kọ síbẹ̀. Èèyàn kan sọ pé ẹja sọ Yorùbá. He formed a COK Moti Kanyenlekan. Only Ambisi Akande and Oshoba should be applauded for supporting the one they could call peer. And we have a lot of lessons to learn from that. Do you know what Tinubu calls Bisi Akande? Can anybody suggest? By the way, there's a book by Bisi Akande, My Participation. It's actually a very good book as well. We'll read a lot of books with time. But do you know what? He calls him Baba. Bisi Akande was the governor of Osun State in 1999. Lam was in Oyo State. Oshoba was in Ogun State. Adebayo. Was that Adebayo? No. Tofarati. That's his name in Ondo State. Adebayo was in Ekiti State. And then you had Bat in Lagos State. They were quote-unquote peers. But I think he also understood the fact that they were not exactly peers. Why? Because Bisi Akande was actually Ade Farati, thank you, was in Ondo State. Bisi Akande was no, not Ade Farati. Ade Farati was the governor of Ondo State, and Adebayo was the governor of Ekiti. No, Agagu came later. Because Ade Farati in 99. I think Agagu was in 2003. I think Agagu was even PDP. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Sherry Bisi Akande, yes, he was a governor in 99, but he was a deputy governor to Bolage. Was Bolage's deputy governor. So I think, Asiwaju also, acknowledge that. And it's good, like you said, very true, that both Bisi Akande and Sheikh Shoba decided to work with Asiwaju, even though they could have called him either their peer or someone younger. But they deferred to him, which is beautiful, to be honest. Thank you very much for that observation. Koboko says, death of Bolage and Abraham Adesanya also created a gap which needed to be filled. That's true. And I don't know if that's been filled now, though. Yes, he's younger to them. Someone says, it's not always easy to have an easy fit Yoruba leader. Tell me about it. Yorùbá máa fojú ẹ rí wàá jàjà Yorùbá gan ló máa lára wọn tó máa kọ́kọ́ jìn lẹ́sẹ̀. It's a human thing. It's not a Yoruba thing, just to be clear. It happens across cultures. It's everywhere. It's like that. It's just that all right, now let me answer the last question. Someone says, Ni Adebayo worked with Tinubu too. Oh, yeah, I think he did, but I don't think he went all the way like Shoba. And, you see Baba Akande everywhere. Where Akande, you? Ọ̀rọ̀ Benin gan, ago méje máa ti kọjá rẹ̀, bẹ́ẹ̀ sọ̀rọ̀ Benin alẹ́. Okay, ẹ kí n sáré parí nǹkan, ẹ kí n dáhùn béèrè tán béèrè lẹ́ẹ̀kan. A few years ago, when Buhari was in power, okay, let's say it this way. When Buhari was in power, some people began to agitate to have a Yoruba nation. Anybody, any politician who didn't see things from that perspective was ridiculed and talked down on. And the primary person that people attacked from that camp was Tinubu. That's the truth. I hope nobody is here that wants to come and even challenge it don't even bother challenging it because it's a fact. I don't even have to run too far to find new sources. A lot of them attacked Tinubu because he was with the ruling party. And they wanted to have... Someone says, now you get it. And that is why I sent a request. Oh, okay. They wanted to have their own nation. Now, their agitation, whatever, is it good or bad? That's not even the point. The point is just that they wanted politicians to support them. Now, here's the funny thing. I used to say back in the day, of course, they used to insult us too, that this thing you're doing will not work. It will not work because you can't do it by shouting. See, the people have been shouting all this while. What have they gotten out of it? But because Tinubu was in he was with the government at the time, even if he's not as powerful as people assumed because of what was going on in Aso Rock at the time. The fact that he was in APC and he was the one who helped, create the Buhari presidency, people just had an issue with him, and a lot of them cursed him out. It's just so funny that some of them are now supporting him. It's quite interesting. I don't like mentioning anything, but it's quite interesting. A lot of them support him now. I don't know. I'm glad they are supporting him, but when they were against him, it wasn't really about the fact that they thought anything through. It was just about the fact that if you're not supporting our cause, you are against Yoruba people. Says who? So when the thing really became hard was when the whole idea of secession started, or want to break out, and you know that no politician will support it, and then definitely not Tinubu because of his interest. So I think that's one of the major reasons people hate him. But the good thing is that at least even those who are trying to talk about secession, they've now seen that, listen, you have to consider politics. And I've said it several times, it's not like there's anything wrong with having Yoruba as a separate nation, an independent nation. It's actually good. But I have a problem personally with folks who raise people's hopes and rile them up with situations in Nigeria. Say it's not good, it's not good. Once we get out to be better. How? That's when the answer stops coming. They will tell you Nigeria is bad. It's like, okay, to be fair, it's better than IPOP. It's not like IPOP. It's not like, I can't even compare. It's more, they are driving you based on what we can, and it's a good thing, to be honest. Like, this is what we could have been. If not for Nigeria, we could have been this, we could have been that. If you look what happened in 1953 to 1952 to 1959, on that trajectory, would have been this, would have been that. So we have to get out. Now the question is how? And that how, you cannot have it without politics unless you want to fight. Those are the two options. Anyway, that's why they hated Tinubu. But the good thing, like I always say, it's good to also add that a lot of people have now understood the fact that even if you want to break off Nigeria, you need a political solution. You can't just shout your way out of it. All right. Some people want to come up. Whether I'll get to Benin today or not, I don't know. But let's bring them up. But please, let's do it this way. 2 minutes so that we can really just move on. But I think I already answered your question, Shao. Oh yeah, Naridunu. Ẹkáàlẹ́ bàbá mi.
So you actually got it right, because you were going so deep into the political term. No one hating because of that politics. Because because you need to look at the people. Which set of people? Naima Wipe, they are majorly from one specific place, and that was why Timothy Binipe. Where do you think these people are from? The people that are sharing their grievances against him. The people from Ondo is very simple, and they say it every time. Tebati Biwon, they are not the major people that hate him. I'm just telling you why a faction from that side hates him. They tell you when the former governor Toku was fighting for states, that is state police, they created that.
But you know, but Onkolo ni idea said
Onkolo ni idea, but he was the one that Buhari fought. Buhari literally fought him. They had to go to court. Enough. And they will tell you, Baba kept quiet. Now I've spoken with many Ondo people. I've asked, why? What did this man do that makes you hate him? So they tell you that we do not think he has our interest at heart. Right? Because he kept quiet. I'm like, but he does not have the political power. He doesn't. You are only exaggerating his might. He doesn't. But that action alone was enough for them to convince them, no, it does not have their interest at heart. So, this is how hatred is being bred. Tebati, when you just need one excuse based on something that is genuine to you. And once you pick it, it does not matter whatever the person does. So now on the other side, the Oshun people is related to Eleteso. And then also there was one interview, me Omoboya Eronti protest that was against him in Oshun during the election to be Kiniwole, Egbon Dis Adeleke, Egbon Davido. And that protest, there was a protest against him. And that protest was the fact that there was one interview, because I had to check, why did people come out and they were calling him Omale? There was one interview in 2001, 2002, I think. And then it was blatantly, was asked directly if he's a Lagos, if that there is rumors that he's from Oshun. And he said, no, I'm a Lagosian. So now that protest was targeted at him, that is Omale. Now that could be the second reason, joined with the other thing. But the third one, and this is why, and is more of an advice to us, majority of the young people online is based on the fact that they are in this space of these people around that are hating on them. So they are listening to whatever negative things that is being, so they are consuming it. These young boys, they have no idea of whatever he has ever done. So they kept on listening, and then they started hating based on what they were hearing from the other people. So they have no reason to hate him. They are not thinking of the Lagos how the Lagos was built. They were only listening, because this, I'm telling you, based on the fact that there are about 5 to 6 people. Now it's a small sample, but they are all young. And then I realized that it's based on the space they were. And also I was in that space, but because I'm very, very strong in my belief, I've been in all these spaces. I realized the more you listen, is so at some point, you want to be confused and like, wait, is this man actually bad? So a whole lot of these small boys, their brain was not fully developed when Tinubu was a governor. So they never knew him other than listening to things that people are sharing about him. Is a godfather, is this. So they now started broadcasting that it based on the things Tondo from that group, not knowing that they were following an agenda. And it's the same thing, Tofun Obini vote. The majority of Yorubas that voted for Obi, they never listened to him until after election. So a whole lot I'm like, wait, is this the person I voted for after election? He's not even articulate. So it was the agenda, and that was what affected a whole lot of people. MRP reduced because a whole lot now are now listening to him. I mean, those young people, they are now listening to him, and like, I've done a little bit of research. This man was actually the one that built Lagos. It's not a lie. So those ones are now pulling out from that propaganda. But a whole lot social left with those young people is from the propaganda from those guys from that space, and they got lost in the propaganda. And that's why Timothy said, history need them. Most of those young ones, they don't even know those things. Thank you, Eshegidigon.
Absolutely. Esheon, thank you very much for your submission. I really do appreciate it. And apparently it's layered, so you have different reasons in different spaces. But I think at the end of the day, everybody will not like you, no matter how good you are. Even Jesus, they killed him. No matter how good or kind or great or loving you are, people that want to hate you will hate you. So at the end of the day, the important thing is to count our blessings, and he has more for him than those who are against him. We are for him, and we are hoping that he will succeed and that he will win the next election, and Nigeria will get better for it. Thank you very much for your questions. And somebody asked in the comment section, whose idea was it? So the Amotekun. So let me put it this way. So when I say it wasn't the idea of Arakurin Akedolu. It is not to reduce his input or his work, just to be clear. But that idea was actually something that was created before he even became governor. It wasn't by him, it was by the group that formed what we now call Dawn Commission, the Western Security Network. So they have plans for different areas of society. Excuse me, please. They have stuff for agriculture and for infrastructure, for security. So their plan for Western Security Network is what they presented to the Governors Forum. The Governors Forum at the time was headed by Aketi. That was Akeredolu. Therefore, he was the one who spearheaded it, and he did a fantastic job. So this doesn't reduce anything, but it's also important to acknowledge the fact that it was actually from Dawn Commission, but then he was the like right now the chairman of the Southwest Governors Forum. Time it was Governor Akeredolu, so that's how he became almost synonymous with Amotekun. I hope I answered that question. All right, let's have everybody. Let's go to some Benin things now. Thank you very much, OA, for coming up, and thank you for Larich for your submission as well. I really appreciate both of you for coming. All right, I still have some things. Say some Yorubas just want to be contrarian, Dr. Badru. Yes. So there are people also, and we see them everywhere, right? So if, for instance, you say something like, "This is the way," okay? This is the way. They will tell you it's this way, not because they know another way, but because they don't want to follow this way. They don't want to follow you. They just don't want. Everybody knows this is the way to life. They will go the other way because they want to prove that you can't be right, not that they are right. And you see it every day in politics. You know, someone Bumblebee, good to see you. Yes, someone like that. It's not that they know the right answer. They just don't think that you are right or that you shouldn't be right. And they have to make sure they do whatever will make them happy that you were wrong, even though you're right. So some people are just contrarian and they'll be all right. But, affect the thanks to King Wasiu Ayinde Marshal. Okay. Professor of Benin, today is Monday, so we're talking about Benin a while back. I've seen a lot of comments on social media, but I just want to sorry I stopped, because what I'm about to say, I have to stop myself. Why is it that people can't engage? Like, if you say you will read, you quote books, and then you now make presentation, and people just go in your comment section, just curse you out, or just type nonsense, and they'll do it with so much confidence. How do people get that much confidence in stupidity? I don't know how that happened. Somebody went on on Facebook, right, under the video, the comment section of one of those Benin videos, and said, Paidu was in Benin before the Ogiso dynasty. So I was like, okay. Okay, this is what happened. The person was like, who is Oduduwa's father? I know the name of the father, but I don't like mentioning the name. One day I will talk about Oduduwa again, or like a session on Oduduwa. There's a reason I never talk about Oduduwa's father. It's the same reason I don't talk about Awolowo's father. Why? You see, when something happens in society and it's spearheaded by a particular individual, society begins to behave like nothing existed before that individual. Not because nothing existed before him, but because there's nothing of consequence compared to what he has introduced. Therefore, the world is really beginning from him, or beginning with him. So when you hear people say things like, Oduduwa did this and that and is our father, it's not like there was no body on earth before him in terms of physical, not the myth now. The myth has its place. but historical Odudua. It's not that that didn't happen. It's like this person was larger than life, and he created something for us that, you know what, we don't even want to think about anybody before him. So history began with him. When we talk about Nigerian politics as a Yoruba person, Awolowo was not the first Yoruba politician now. There were many before him. Whether it was in the 30s, in the 20s, in the 19th century. A lot of people invested in media. I mean, about Macaulay, his first party was 1923. Awolowo's first party was 1951. That's 28-year gap. So it's not like nobody came before him, but nobody did anything of consequence like Awo. Therefore, our political history begins with Awo. It does not mean that we don't learn about the people that came before him, which is also why we learn about Obatala and learn about Oramfe and all those great people that lived in Ife or ruled, you know, the systems they had before Odudua. But nobody created the kind of system Odudua created. Odudua created a system that, and I'm not equating them, I'm just using this as an example. Odudua created a system that never existed in Yoruba mindset, like in Yoruba collective memory. That's what I was looking for. It did not exist in Yoruba collective memory to have a situation where you band people together. I mean, they are the same. You bring them together, and then you come up with a concept of divine kingship. Nobody did that before him. And that's when some people try to tell you, oh, but Odudua was not the first king in Ife. There are many kings in Ife before him. I was like, yes. People usually throw that at me because they assume that they have a gotcha moment, but it doesn't make any sense. There have been many kings in Ife before Odudua, but none of them was the king of Ife. So you have kings in Ife, but was the first king of Ife. We'll talk about that some other time. But the point is that what he did was the beginning of a new order, just like Odudua. Now, just like Awo did as well. What he did, that's why we don't talk about. We don't talk so much about Akinduati or talk about H.O. Davies or Samaki Soya because of. They did fantastic work while they were in NYM in the 30s and 40s, and people like Alakija, you know, and what's this other person's name? I remember Maja, the father, not the son. These were great men, but we start the history from there. Why is that important? Because when people ask you about who is the father of Odudua, what they think they are trying to do is that they're trying to tell you that you don't know his father, therefore it doesn't exist, which makes no sense. It's not like we don't know his father. We know the. Let me ask you a question now. Okay, I won't ask you the question, but if you think about it right now, if I ask us now, who is Chief Obafemiolowo's father, many of us may not know, or even if you know, you may not remember, or if you remember, you may not. It's not like it doesn't have consequences. It's just that his being is not necessary for the conversation we are having in terms of Nigerian political order or Nigerian political system from the Yoruba perspective. So this clown asked me, all of that to say this. This clown asked me, oh, who's Oduduwa's father and everything. So I was like, okay, who is Paidu's father? Which, by the way, if you're talking to Edo people, that's a very good question you be asking them. When they ask you about Oduduwa's father, I don't tell them Oduduwa's father, even though I know his name. Because if I tell you Oduduwa's father, you ask me for the grandfather, then it never ends. It's redundant and it's unnecessary. So I asked, who is Paidu's father? So this guy comes around and says that Paidu lived in Benin, you know, a very long time before the Ogiso, but that he also was Ogiso and that he was Ere. How can he be Ere? When Ere literally was the second Ogiso and the first one was Obagodo, who happens to be the son of Oduduwa, how can Paidu, if Paidu was Ere, who was the second Ogiso, how can he be the father of, what's the word now? How can he be existing before Oduduwa? You know, that kind of, it doesn't make sense essentially. In Benin history, and this is like a recap, in Benin history, by the way, when I talk about Benin history, I'm not talking about Yoruba history or Yoruba perception of Benin history or what Yoruba people believe about Benin people. That's not is not the way to discuss history. I believe that it is disrespectful if you're going to tell the history of a people and you say from your perspective primarily. That shouldn't be the way. It should be from their perspective. You tell their own story. And so people then ask me, if you're telling their story, how come they're always insulting you and saying you are wrong? Because what they are telling you right now is not their story. What I'm telling you right now is a fabrication that began in 1970. And if you really want to know their story, you go back to what happened before 1970, what they believed before 1970, what they told people before 1970 about themselves. So at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're listening to their fathers, not to them. Why? Because their fathers are closer to the past than them. Isn't that so? It's like what people do with all this. Let me not use another people's example. Might not go through jabs. So what have we learned so far? We have learned that we used a number of books the last time we had this conversation. A Short History of Benin by Jacob Ẹkáàbọ, which anyone who wants to study history of Benin should study. Now you may ask, why is that important to you? You're a Yoruba person. I'll tell you why. I played the video the last time. We don't have to play it now, but I played it last time when the Oba of Benin told their new version of their history. And then, you know what? I think it's I'll play the beginning part of it, but I could tell you as well. Anyway, it's not. I don't have to play it. So in the beginning, in the beginning, I'm trying to look for something. So about being said something about the new version of history. You know, whatever you want to call yourself. So they talked about their history, and then he graciously added a caveat, and he said that it is not their place to impose that history on others, and that history should stay within their own boundaries. But I think it's important for me to play it because it's going to sound as if I'm making things up. So just to be clear, Mambo, just give me 1 second. I found it. I just need to get to the minute. Okay, good. Mambo. So this is going to be a bit long, but I think it's worth it because we're talking about the king here, right? So this is about Benin Ikwakwalokpolo Omolobanedo. Take a listen. Oh no, you can't take a listen. No, this is not connecting. Mambo. Oh yeah, I go Baba. Okay. This was at his coronation, the present Oba of Benin. Take a listen.
That Oduduwa sent his son Oromia at the request of elders of Benin to return with them as ruler of their realm. Oromia's stay in Benin may have been short, but before he left, a child was born to him who was later crowned Oba, and as is known today, Oromia's time in Benin, however short-lived, he was an Oba, and so he was the first Oba after the Ogiso dynasty came to an end. He established Obaship in Benin. By implication, therefore, the listing of past Obas should therefore begin from Oromia, as it is listed in the Gariwa's book. Short history of Benin, actually making my revered father 39th Oba that reigned in Benin, if the listing is counted from and should be counted from Oromia. I therefore stand before you today as the 40th Oba of Benin.
All right, 1 second. There's something else he said. But here's the first part. He mentioned two names that are very important in Yoruba history, Oduduwa and Oromia. That's the reason I talk about this thing, to be honest. Once you mention those two, you have brought Yoruba people into the matter. So if you had created your own fathers, because you're being creative. You could have been creative by coming up with other names. Nobody would care. But once you mention Oromio Odua, you are bringing Yoruba people into the picture. And it's not for anything bad. So he mentioned Odua. Oromio is actually Odua's grandson, not his son. And then he moved there. He stayed in Benin. He didn't even enter Benin like that. He was in Uselu. And then he was there for 2 years. And then he returned. Now, that is our connection. Then this is the reason we are speaking up now. Take a listen to this part.
Of God Almighty, and in the name of our ancestors, I welcome you all to this auspicious occasion. In particular, I welcome His Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCF, our head of state, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, here represented by the very, very able Vice President, Professor Osibanjo. You're welcome. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the events of today mark the end of activities prescribed by customs and tradition for my accession to the revered throne of this ancient kingdom. I accept with faith and humility the destiny which ordained that henceforth I shall be the embodiment and expression of the culture, aspirations, and history of our people. As the principal actor in the events of several months that led to this awesome position, I've had a unique sense of our historical continuum, what royalty represents for our people are justice, peace, and unity. The time-tested, rancor-free succession process bequeathed to us in our customs and tradition is a great tribute to the far-sightedness and wisdom of our forefathers and our people. This collective achievement is a veritable proof of our ability to manage our own affairs. It makes us very proud of our heritage. Today, as the 40th Oba of Benin, a direct descendant of Oromiya, the son of Oduduwa, whom the Benin people of that era knew as a Kaladeran, their self-exiled prince, who later became ruler in Ile-Ife. The Benin people recognize Oduduwa and his origin, but it is not our place to force this recognition on others outside our boundaries.
That's all. They created a new history for Oduduwa, called him a self-exiled prince, which is absolute rubbish, because he was not exiled by anybody or himself. Which, by the way, there's another account of that character being banished because he slept with his father's wife. But I'm not reading that. That's not today's topic. Oduduwa is not that. But there's something that the king said that I actually really respect. He said that it's not their place to tell people that stuff within their boundaries. In other words, whatever history they want to say by the Kaladera, they can keep it within their space. But once you go online and you begin to change Yoruba history, and you begin to say something about Oduduwa, right, and say things like, oh, he was Kirikon, his father was Ogiso Wodo. If his father could not have been Ogiso Wodo, and I'll explain something. If Benin people claim that they had 31 Ogisos, listen to this very carefully, everybody. please. If Benin people claim that they have had 31 Ogisos before the interregnum and then the Oba dynasty. So you had Evian with his interregnum and his son Ogiamen, and then you have the Oba dynasty. If Benin people claim that they had 31 Ogisos, the last Ogiso, being Ogiso Wodo, gave birth to a Kaladera. If they claim that that guy that they gave birth to a Kaladera is the Odudua, then they will be going against their own ancient tradition, which says that the very first Ogiso was the son of Odudua. I know the funny thing. The king before this present king, that's Oba Eredua. The present king right now is Oba Eware II. I wrote a book titled I Remain Your Obedient Servant. But he wrote an article in Sunday Vanguard, in the Sunday Vanguard of May 9, 2004. I'm going to read part of it to you, and it's quoting a Gareva, but he changed the word in it. I did not quote it the last time. I didn't read it because I was waiting for today. So listen and be blessed. From a book called The Benin Ife. 1 second. I want to get you the name of the title of the book in case you. The Benin Ife Controversy, Clash of Myth of Origins. By the way, there was no clash until 1970, just to be clear. But let me just read some to you from this one. It is during the preparation for his coronation that the future Oba chooses the title or name by which he is to be known at his coronation. How and where this is done began with the arrival from Ile-Ife of Prince Oromiyan, the son of Odudua of Uhe. We said he's actually the grandson, but some people call him son of Odudua. Sometimes, and it's something you hear a lot, son of Jesus. We have a lot of Christians here, Abi. I'm going to go ahead of Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. David did not give birth to Jesus, but was from the lineage of David. That's the idea of son of Odudua. It doesn't mean I'm a son of Odudua. Doesn't mean that he gave birth to me, like directly. We are in that lineage, so it's the same idea. So it says, how and where this is done began with the arrival from Ile-Ife of Prince Oromiyan, the son of Odudua of Uhe. Uhe is Benin way of saying Ife. About 1,170 years ago. It's not that long, but we'll come back to that later. According to modern historians, briefly, this is the account. Before the advent of Oromiyan, the kings that ruled the people that came to be known as Edo or Benin were called Ogiso. The title is said by local tradition to have been derived and abbreviated from the description Ogie Noriso, meaning king in heaven. And it originated from the wisdom in managing the affairs of state, especially in settling disputes, as demonstrated by the first and second of the earliest rulers, known as Igodo and Ere. Who is talking here? Omonoba Eredua. That's the king before the present Eware. I'm going to read it slowly. It says this title is said by local tradition to have been derived, that's Ogiso, to have been derived from and abbreviated from the description Ogie Noriso, meaning king in heaven or king of the sky or sky king. And it originated from the wisdom, in quote, in managing the affairs of state, especially in settling disputes, as demonstrated by the first and second of the earliest rulers, known as Igodo and Ere. Remember those names, please. Don't forget. I must comment here in passing that I personally have never accepted the account of our illustrious historian Jacob Uegaiva when he wrote in the very first edition of his now authoritative book, A Short History of Benin, the following. Many years ago, Odudua of Uhe, Ile-Ife, that's what Uegaiva wrote, the father and progenitor of the Yoruba kings, sent his eldest son, Obagodo, who took the title of Ogiso with a large retinue all the way from Uhe to found a kingdom in this part of the world. I'm about to read something to you that you might fall off your seat, so I have to adjust my own self. So it says here, in the 4th I'll explain. In the fourth and now current edition of the book, the late author wrote, many, many years ago, the Benis came all the way from Egypt to found a more secure shelter in this part of the world after a short stay in the Sudan and at Ile-Ife, which the Benin people call Uher. What did you just notice? If you were here the last time we came, last time we discussed this matter, a guy who said many, many years ago, Odudua of Uhe, Ile-Ife, sent his son Obagodo, and he ruled this place. That man wrote that book in 1934. He wasn't talking about the people of Edo. He was talking about the rulers of Edo, of Benin, not the people. Again, the connection between Yoruba and Benin is not about the population of Benin people. Benin people are not the connection. Let's not go deep now. They are not the connection. The connection is the royalty, the monarchy, and some of the people that migrated with Oromio. Original document states that the man was sent by his son, the man was sent by his father, Odudua. The man's name was Obagodo. Obagodo, Obagudu, Igodo, Igudu, Obanigodo, they are the same person. Just different names for the same person, different variations of a person's name. Okay? And a very good example, I should stop here to say this. A very good example is what you find with William. William, Will, Bill, Billy, it's the same thing. Okay? Just like Richard, Rick, Dick is the same name. It's just different variations of the same name. Or James, Jacob, Jakes is the same name. So if you hear Obagodo, Obanigodo, Igodo, Igudu, is the same person. King Ibedu, I'm not your bro. You are too ignorant to be correcting me. Will, Bill, Billy, William are the same. If you don't know, Google is your friend. Don't be a nuisance. God bless you. You know what? No, I'm not going to stop because of this clown. Go and check or go home and ask those at home. They are variations of the same name. You find some variations, you'll be wondering what's the connection. It's like if you hear someone, Elizabeth. Do you know how many variations of the name Elizabeth? Liz, Lizzie, Beth, Betty, and so on and so forth. There are many names. I can't remember. Those are the ones I can just remember. Eliza is the same thing. It's from the Elizabeth. Okay, so you can have many variations. So the point is just to say that I'm saying that because you read different books. If you read Short History of Benin by Gariba, you see Obagodo. If you read some other books like H.F. Marshall's Intelligence Report on Benin, you might see Igodo or something like that. Yes, Elizabeth, thank you. Lizzie, Elizabeth, Eliza, Eliza, Betty, Beth is all from Rebecca, Becky, Bex is the same. It's just variations of the same name. Okay, and why did this person say will and be cannot? When you don't know something, why not just go and Google it? At least these days, you don't have to stress yourself that much. All of that to say this. That something happened. Excuse me, please. I think I need to mute this guy. May God bless you. I'm glad you are here, but you are disturbing me and you're not helping. You're not helping this conversation. Yes, Willie as well. Thank you. All right, back to this. Eredua did something interesting. He quoted something that was written in the original book, then he quoted a new version. Someone said John F. Kennedy was referred to as Jack. Really? Realize we're going to stay with the name because people are really talking about this name. Like your Yakubu now. Yakubu go on. Yakubu is Yakub. Is Yakubu? Is Yakub? Is Jacob? Is Jack? Is it can also be Jakes. In some places it can also be James. But it's the same Yakubu. Okay, so I think we've done enough variations of names. So let's now go back to the story. So Obaredua decided to quote, "Hey Jesus, consider yes, Bill Clinton is William. His real name is actually William. Billy Graham, his original name is William Graham, and okay, I think people like this name thing. How did it get here? Yes, Bill Clinton. Any other examples? Mike Johnson, Mickey, Mikey. All right, let's move on now. Thank you very much. Obaredua first quoted Egariba's book, the very first version. Now, the first edition of that book was published in 1934 in Edo language. Then the English language was published in 1936. He quoted what he said, but he changed something. Let me read to you what he wrote here. Then I will read to you the book itself. So he says here, yes, Deborah, Debbie, Deb, thank you. He says, many, many years ago, Oduduwa of Uhe, Ile-Ife, the father and progenitor of the Yoruba kings, sent his eldest son, Obagodo, who took the title of Ogiso, with a large retinue all the way from Uhe to found a kingdom in this part of the world. That's what Obaredua said. Now let's go and read the book. You'll notice something different, just one word, but it's important. So this is what Gariba said. Many, many years ago, Oduduwa of Uwe, Ile-Ife, the father and progenitor of Yoruba kings, sent his eldest son, Obagodo, who took the title of Oba, with a large retinue all the way from Uhe, Ile-Ife, to found a kingdom in this part of the world. The difference is Oba and Ogiso. So the first thing that Obaredua was trying to make very clear is that this is not the same dynasty as Oromiyo's dynasty, which was when the Oba dynasty began. So he changed that word and wrote Ogiso. And I think he's actually correct. Why? Because that was the beginning of the Ogiso dynasty. But for some reason, Egariba used the word Oba. Interestingly, the chapter Gogogogon is actually Ogiso. And by the second paragraph, he started using the word Ogiso. He just used Oba in that first paragraph alone. Then he kept using Ogiso till the end. And so it tells you that it was actually talking about the first Ogiso. And he also mentioned it here. Let me read to you again the end of the chapter. He mentioned, for a considerable number of years after the death of Ogiso, there was an interregnum, and the following leaders of the people, Ere, Orire, Akwankwan, Ekpigo, Oria, Emose, Ororo, Obioye, Arigo, Evian, and his son Ogiame, administered a republican form of government. At that time, the country was known as Igodomigodo. Now, if you put this thing side by side and read other books, like what we're going to read later, the first three Ogisos were Obagodo or Obagodo, Ere, and Orire, the first three. And that's why when people say, we have nothing to do with you, I tell them that it's not just your Oba that is from Ife. Even the Ogisos are from Ife. They get very angry, but it's the truth. And I don't have to fight you. I just quote books. And that will be all right, hopefully. The Ogisos themselves, they were from Ife. I didn't make that up, by the way. Now, what the king then did, that's Obaredua, that's the father of the present king. What he then did was to switch it. And I'll tell you what he did. Let's go back to his book. It says here, in the fourth and now current edition of the book, the late author wrote, many, many years ago, the Benis came all the way from Egypt to found a more secure shelter in this part of the world after a short stay in the Sudan and at Ile-Ife, which the Benin people call Uhe. Number one, all these young, some of them are old, but they are young brains, childish brains. They are saying that Ife is in Kogi State. This is what the Redua says. They said the Ife is Uhe, Ile-Ife. There's no Ile-Ife in Kogi State. That's first. Number two, he mentioned that they came all the way from Egypt, but they passed through Sudan and Ife. Why did they do that? Obaredua started doing this thing in the 70s and 80s. And then he published this in year 2004. He published this in the Sunday Vanguard of May 9, 2004. Why did he do that? I'll tell you why. If a story is so intricately woven into Benin history, you cannot separate them. You can't. So, even if you don't want to acknowledge it as your source, you have to find a way to still include it. Meanwhile, this is a different version. Now, you hear many versions today. But this is the last of us version. That's why kings are respected, but they're not necessarily custodians of the history of they're not historians. They're not historians. And people do things for, and we know why they did this in Benin. They did it for political reasons. And it's a shame when you discover that there are about 7 versions. As I'm seated here right now, I can tell you 7 different versions starting in 1970. And each version is it's like they're trying to look for which one is more ridiculous. One even has tortoise inside, but we'll get back to that later. Anyway, the man here is talking about Egypt. He's talking about Sudan. He's talking about Ife. Egypt, because it is more, what's the word now? They think it's more prestigious to connect themselves with Egypt. Sudan, because everybody was using Sudan at a point to challenge the supremacy of Ife. And I usually tell people about this Sudan thing. Sudan is not Sudan the nation. Okay? A lot of people say, oh, we are from Sudan. I know some people in Yoruba land also were trying to, it was politics. I don't want to mention the names of those people. They were also trying to play politics and say, oh, we're going to disconnect ourselves from Ife. We're going to say we're from Sudan. Sudan, Western Sudan or Sudan that we have right now is younger than Yoruba land. Even their first rulership is younger than Yoruba land. Sudan was not, okay, let me put it this way. Sudan is more a description of everything sub-Saharan from the perspective of the Arabs. So if you're living in South Africa, the Arab guy will call you Sudanese. Okay? Why? Because the word Sudan means black. It's not about a nation. There's no nation state that was called Sudan. We had Kemet, we had all kinds of things. They named themselves that much later. It's just like what happened with Ethiopia. The present day Ethiopia is not the same thing as the original Ethiopia. Ethiopia was much bigger than what you now call Ethiopia. This one they call Ethiopia now used to be called Abyssinia until they changed the name to Ethiopia. Sudan, the same thing. It's really based on the person who is calling you from time to time. So, for instance, if you look at, no, Kush should be, okay, let me answer the person in the comment section. Kush is another word for the Ethiopia tele, not this one, no. But yeah, you had Kemet and so on and so forth. Anyway, the point is, if you were to ask a Portuguese, he will call a Nigerian Guinea. He will call a South African Guinea. He will call someone in Guinea-Conakry Guinea. All of us are Guinea, because that's what black means to him. That's a word. That's the meaning of black. Okay, so that's why you have Equatorial Guinea, Guinea-Conakry, Guinea is just black. If you go to those who like the English or the French, you have Niger or Niger. It's the same thing. Where you get the word nigger, it just means black. That's what Sudan also is from in the Arabic language. Bilad al-Sudan means the land of the blacks. So when a person in Nigeria tells you that they used to live in Sudan, the question is, which part of Sudan were you living in? Because in our minds, we are thinking that Sudan means this Sudan. So if you read ancient texts and you see Sudan, they're not talking about the country called Sudan, but they're also trying to rewrite their story. They're trying to connect themselves to Sudan by force. Meanwhile, especially if you're Yoruba, you cannot be doing that because you're even older than the dynasties that now became much later as Sudan and all of those things. All of that to say that there was this thing. This people were enamored by the idea of something foreign, something Sudan. Like you have to be going towards the east and up north, Sudan and Egypt. But what Eredua is doing here in 2004, he was not the first person to try it. Somebody did it. Some people did it in 1940. I'm going to read you a book by H.F. Marshall. I'm going to read a book by H.F. Marshall. The book is called Intelligence Report. Intelligence Report on Benin. Sorry, Intelligence. No, okay, no. Intelligence Report on Benin by H.F. Marshall. This was published in 1940, and this is what he had to say. According to Benin tradition, by the way, he said that what he's writing here is also, it's been dealt with, right, in other works, beginning with one that was written in 1924. And so what did he say here? According to Benin tradition. If you ask me what do I like most in this book, these four words, according to Benin tradition. In other words, it's not anybody from Yoruba land that's trying to write anybody's history. It's what those people told this man. By the way, there are other books. I won't get into all those things today. I'm just doing a recap. We'll go deeper next time. But we'll be here tomorrow, where we'll probably listen to the full thing, so I'll be prepared for the next class. According to Benin tradition, Ife, locally known as Uhe, was the cradle of the human race and was the only land in the world. Oduduwa, the first king of Ife, possessed a snail shell which had the magical power of creating earth. It's actually similar to what you find in the Garibal's book as well. Shortly before his death, Oduduwa called his seven. By the way, the Garibal's book was published before this one, but this one is not using a Garibal's book. This one is going to the same source where Gariba got his stuff from. And before this book that was published, at least 4 Roth's book. There's a book by the colonial official in 1924, and there's a Garibal's book. And then this one in 1940, H.F. Marshall. I think the only one I don't have here is the one written in 1924, because I'm looking for the guy's name. I've not found it. Compiled by Mr. H.I. Havens, district officer. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that all of them said the same thing. When I'm done, okay, let me just read you. The question should be, where did they all get it from? And why is it different today? If you read the preface of Agariva's book, he mentioned that he got it from the bards, from the worshippers and keepers of the deities and of the kings and the palace. No, let me not misrepresent what he said. So let's read his own words. We're coming back to H.F. Marshall in a bit. So it says here, it says, the history was collected from the following authorities: Ihogbe, the worshippers and recorders of the departed Obas; Ogbelaka, the royal bards; Igweromwo, the royal brassmith; Oenhosa of Akwaga, one of the descendants of the Benin native fathers of the 15th and 16th centuries; Okaeben, Ogiame, Efas. If you hear the word Efa, what do you think of? You think of chiefs, whether in Ife or Oyo. All right. Iyashere, Esama, Ehobame, and so on, to whom I owe unbounded thanks. So that's where he got the story from. And after getting this story, guess what he did? He said, above all, I feel very grateful to His Highness. By the way, he mentioned some other people, though, Egareva, Mrs. A.J. Egareva, and Yesufu Otokiti, for their kind help. Above all, I feel very grateful to His Highness Akenzua II, the Oba of Benin, for his unfailing advice and aid by which I was able to complete his work in spite of its many difficulties, and also to the late Oba Eweka II, who very kindly attended to me for over 3 hours on March 15, 1930, for the necessary revision of this work when the original manuscript was read to him by the present Oba, then Edaike of Uselu. Okay, there's another book I found it, Mr. H.L. Ward Price. Maybe we'll read that one some other time. All right, what does this mean? All this Turenchi. What it's saying basically is that there was a king called Eweka II. That was when he started writing. That was when Agariba began to write the book. He completed it while he was still king. Then Akenzua, who was a prince at the time, was in that room for 3 hours while he was reading the manuscript and they were making necessary corrections, Eredua now comes and writes you those two versions that I read earlier. And then his son is the one whose voice we heard earlier, who said, at least let's keep this story within our boundaries. So what's my own business with all of this? Number one, I'm Yoruba. Number two, Oduduwa Oromiyan. You're literally talking about our forebears. Number three, you are now taking your story outside your boundaries. And I was confused for a while, I should say this. This was maybe 2007 or so. 7, 8, thereabout. I was very confused about this whole thing. And it's very personal to me. Happened on some blogs. Blogs were not very popular at the time. They're just coming up. Benin's just moved into that blog space and put a lot of lies there. If you want to keep your lies for yourself, just lock it and give it to your people. But when you start changing people's history, they now begin to question it. And the beautiful thing is that we're not trying to, we're having some issues on TikTok. If you're on TikTok, please power tap. Thank you very much. We're not trying to rewrite your history. We're just going back to earliest versions of what you claim. So that's where everybody got their story from. They went to the palace, they went to the leaders, they went to the worshippers, they spoke to those people, and they got. Okay, Lagos is Eweka. Then Akenzua. 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 Then Eredua is yellow lady, Erediowa. That's Erediowa. And then you have Eware, Ewuare. All right. HF Marshall. Let me just tell you the story without having to read, because we read a lot anyway. So, and we'll listen to everything again tomorrow, like the proper version. This is just like a recap. The folks who started going to school in the 1940s in Benin now began to do something different. So the story that they also believed was that the only land that existed in the world was Ile-Ife. Not in Kogi State, the one Ile-Ife was the only land existing. And that Oduduwa gave Obagodo or Obanigodo a snail shell with earth and told him to go and create earth. By the way, that myth is also a copy of the Ife myth. So he told him to go and, thank you, Great Army. So, what was I? So he collected that and now traveled southeast. That's southeast from Ife. And when he got there, he then poured the earth and then created a new space. Now, that's a myth. But the fact that you can pick from it is the fact that there's an Oduduwa and there's a son called Obagodo who left Ife. Every other thing is a myth. How do I know? Because in reality, the earth was existing. In reality, as a matter of fact, people were already living there. What he did, and I think I should mention it today, what he did is not different from what Oduduwa did in Ife or what Oromiyan did in Oyo or what Popo did in Ondo, or many Yoruba groups did the same thing in Ekiti as well, was that you may have people already there, but for the most part, people live, starting with Oduduwa in Yoruba, collective memory. We have this thing where you bring everybody together and then you create a town or a city. And that's why you don't call Yoruba people. If you remember to growing up, you wouldn't hear things like I'm going to the village in Yoruba land. We don't use words like that. To go to the village means you're actually going to the farm. But when you're going, you say you're going home, because people from the village also come home for festivals. So we're always going home. Home is usually town. We say hometown, or we're going to our cities. So that was exactly what Obagodo did when he got there. When they said he created earth, what they mean is that in reality, it's that he created a new order. some of these things, I think people sometimes don't know the difference between myth and history, right? The myth is that he brought a snail shell filled with sand and he poured it on the ground from Ife all the way to Benin, and then he created a new space. That's a myth. But the reason for that myth is not for you to be shouting, where is the snail shell, where is the sand? The reason for that myth is to tell you the fact that he owns the land. Number two, number one is that he created a new order. Number two is that he owns the land. And by the time you have the Oba dynasty, there was a new myth for the Oba as well. And it had to do with land as well. Telling that the Oba owns the land. The idea basically is that before this person, anything that happened before this person arrived on scene does not matter. So it's the beginning of our history. And that's why Obagodo is. So when people begin to get angry, they need to understand why their fathers did what they did. The man was so great. He did something that nobody in that space had ever thought of. Therefore, they acquiesced and they were willing. It's like saying that there's this song, today my life begins. Everything that happened before today, no matter. Today, our lives just began. All right, so that's how it happened. So I was saying that by the 1940s, people in Benin began to change, began to feel like they need to go a bit, what's the word, oriental, shall I say, or a bit more modern. In other words, they're going to connect themselves with a happening place. And I'm going to read to you from H.F. Marshall right now. It says, one of Oduduwa's sons, Obagodo, let me just read it from the beginning. According to Benin tradition, Ife, locally known as Ue, was the cradle of the human race and was the only land in the world. Oduduwa, the first king of Ife, possessed a snail shell which had the magical power of creating earth. Shortly before his death, Oduduwa called his 7 sons and giving to each of them a portion of the medicine from the magical snail shell, sent them out to form the inhabited world. One of Oduduwa's sons, called Obanigodo or Obagodo, on receiving his share from the magical snail shell, he set out with his followers to the southeast, creating land as he went. He finally reached the present site of Benin, and there he and his followers settled down and gave the place the name of Ugodonigodo or Igodomigodo. Certain of the present inhabitants of Benin claim to trace their descent from this first migration. So there are people that will say that they are from the Obagodo Ogiso's time. It should be noted that certain of the intelligentsia are no longer prepared to accept this traditional story, but claim that the original inhabitants came straight from Egypt. So whatever Eredua was doing, it's the pushback that some people started doing after they had gone to school. But everybody usually experiences this thing. Maybe you're having identity crisis. So your Bible also had the identity crisis at the time. Said they were from Benin. Said they were from Egypt or Mecca. But it's not true. It should be noted that certain of the intelligentsia are no longer prepared to accept this traditional story, but claim that the original inhabitants came straight from Egypt. Now it says here, there is no tradition and even less evidence on which they can base this claim. On the other hand, there is the undoubted fact that linguistic experts are agreed that the Edo language is unconnected with Yoruba, and certain Edo villages, notably Udo and certain of the Isi villages, have their own story of the creation, which appear to have nothing to do with Ife. The story of the creation given above probably refers to only a ruling class who came from Ife and found here an earlier race of whose origin nothing is known. When people get angry and say, it's not about the people, it's about the king. 1 second, please. I have to change the audio source. Sorry, guys. So the story, I mean, people began to, I'm a bit distracted, I apologize. I'm trying to switch, let me just concentrate and switch the audio so I can really, really focus on you. You can have all my attention. Who here likes musicals? All right, we're back. Okay. You have my attention now. I mean, happy? Sure, you shall get the point. Now, I'm going to end with the book we ended with the last time. The book is the Journal of History. Journal of the Historical Society of Nigeria, Volume 8, Number 3, December 1976. The Origin of the Eweka Dynasty of Benin, a study in the use and abuse of oral traditions. This was written by G.A. Akinola. But to be clear, he did not sit down in Yoruba land writing the book. He went to Benin. How do I know? Because he wrote it here. Let me read to you. It says, in order to find out what the current traditions in Benin say about the above problems, that is whether Eweka I, the first Oba of Benin, was in fact a son of Oromiyan, a prince of Ife, as in the received traditions, son of Ekaladera alias Oromiyan, the only heir of Owodo, last of Ogiso rulers, according to the new accounts, the present writer collected oral traditions in the city, that of Benin, in April 1973. My informants included His Highness Akenzua II, the then reigning Oba of Benin, 6 members of the Ihogbe, worshippers and recorders of the departed Obas, just like in Egarevas, including Chief Samson Ihama, the leader, Chief S. Mokpai, a descendant of the Ogiame, Chief J. Egareva, the leading historian of Benin, was still alive at the time, Chief Egobiamen, the Obadagmoyi of Benin, and a few others. So it wasn't like he just sat down one place and wrote a story for them. So why are we even reading this book? You see, everything we read so far, whether it's from Egareva or from H.F. Marshall, or the other books, the one by Lingroth, the one by Talbot, the one by Ward Price, and the other one, there's consistency about the connection with Ife. What really happened was that in 1970, one gentleman, if I can call him that, decided to write a new history for Benin people. His name is S.B. Omorege. He wrote a book, and then he started introducing Ekalada and started changing the story of Benin people. Around that same period, 3 other people wrote their own versions of the history, but they published their versions in the newspaper. One was called Edun Akezua, Edebiri, and Eyare. I hope I get the names correctly. Let me just check to be sure. Yes, Edun Akezua, D.U. Edebiri, and Eyare. So those 4 people had 4 different accounts of Benin history. That was when the Wala started. By the time this man got to Benin in 1976, there was also a new version in the palace, making 5. And that one included a tortoise. Let me read that one. I don't want to read everything we read before, but I'm going to read the one that has tortoise, because who doesn't like tortoise? Ejapa oko yoni bo bang 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 bang. Memory. Mumbo, I saw that tortoise thing was just ridiculous. Very, very ridiculous. Fine, found it. Most of the members of the Ihogbe whom I interviewed were young men, and they had apparently agreed beforehand on the testimonial which the leader, the Ihama, should present. I'll tell that again. Most of the men of the Ihogbe, who are the Ihogbes, they are worshippers and recorders of departed Obas. So most of the members of the Ogbe whom I interviewed were young men, and that apparently agreed beforehand on the testimony which the leader, the Ihama, should present. He was, however, occasionally interrupted during the course of his story, whose summary is as follows. During the reign of Ogiso, during the reign of Ogiso Wodo, his only heir, Ekaladera, was exiled from Benin City. Is that true? Yes. By the way, propaganda always has a modicum of truth. He wandered in the forest until he came to Ife, where he was made king on account of his generosity. Is that true? No. Based on my authority, no. Based on the received traditions of ancient Benin people, Ekaladera never went beyond a place called Ogoton. He didn't even know Ife existed in terms of going there. He didn't go there. He was banished, and there are different accounts for why he was banished. Number one, there's an account that his father, Ogiso Wodo, who was the last Ogiso, by the way, not the first, second, third, fourth of it, the 31st. The last Ogiso Wodo, had a son, Ekaladera, and he had no other children, but he had many wives. And those wives, of course, wanted to have children, which makes sense. So what did he do? And you can find this in the story in the book by Egaieva, A Short History of Benin. What did he do? It sends his wife. I don't know if you should have done this, but he sent his wife to the diviner to consult the oracle, and then the oracle told the woman essentially that the reason is that she had to be sacrificed or something like that, because she was the reason they were not having children. She gets back home and tells the other wives that the reason they're not having kids was because of Ekaladera, the only son. So they began to pester the Ogiso. Eventually, he gave in, and the idea was for them to kill Ekaladera. It's also in the book by H.F. Marshall that they should kill Ekaladera. But of course, he's the father now. So he told the executioners, don't kill him, just, get him, just let him go and not come back, essentially banish him. That's why when the Oba said Ekaladera was a self-exiled prince, it's not true. There's no other way to say it. Respectfully, it is not true. He was not self-exiled, he was banished. And there are two versions for that banishment. The first one was the fact that he was banished because his father's wives made his father banish him because of the idea of having kids. Of course, later on they discovered that they didn't have kids even after they banished him. So they had to go back to the oracle, and then they told them that it was actually the woman that was supposed to be dealt with. The other version was the fact that he slept with his father's wife, and so they banished him. Neither of these stories is actually Buyukun. And if a person is not a bastard, you're not going to use the story of somebody like that as the story of Yoruba's progenitor. If you're going to change your history, just change it to yourself, but don't begin to insult our own. You get what I'm saying? Like, make up a name for, you can call it Ekaladera Paidu. Paidu was banished, and then you now have a new, in fact, you have nothing to do with Ife, that's okay. But you cannot use those names, Odudua, or you can't use those, and you can't have all those deities, Olokun, Shango, Ogun, Ailala, Odudua. They are all in Benin tomorrow. Ifa, they are all there. Don't be changing history unnecessarily. Anyway, so they said that the only Ekaladera was exiled from Benin City. He wandered in the forest until he came to Ife. That was a lie, but let me read the story. He wandered in the forest until he came to Ife, where he was made. By the way, if you read, I think it's Word Price. Was it Word Price? I think it's Word Price. The journey from Benin to Ife is 20 months. 20 months, that's like 20 months. So imagine one single individual walking the forest. Maybe you'll be playing with monkey, but what of lions? How about leopards and cheetahs and all those animals in the forest? Guy was wandering for 20. Anyway, Isha was made king on account of his generosity. This is where it gets interesting. Mr. Tortoise later discovered this prince at Ife, where he had become very prosperous, and took reports of this to Benin. Ijakpa. This is not a myth, though. This is a history. Ijakpa, Okoyonibo. Mr. Tortoise then took reports of this to Benin, An invasion of Ife was mounted, but Ekaladeran succeeded in beating it back. Nevertheless, he invited his father, Owodo, to join him at Ife. And the Ogiso accordingly emigrated from Benin to spend the rest of their days with his son in Ife. God punish evil. The name Ife itself was derived from a Kaladeran's phrase, Ile Ife, and it means I run to freedom. Irony. Meanwhile, Ogiso Owodo's vacation of his throne through his emigration to Ife had led to the assumption of power by Evian. That's not true. The original story was the fact that after Ogiso before Ogiso Owodo died, they discovered that the real issue was the woman. So he sent an emissary to Ekaladeran in Ugo, not Ife, to apologize to him and ask him to come back home. He said no. So his son could not take the throne. And there was an interregnum. Around that time, there was a man called Evian who killed a wild beast. And because of his bravery, they made him the administrator. And then later on, his son, Ogiame, he wanted his son to take over. And that was around the time when when Benin people began to ask that they send a message to Ife to get another leader. And then they sent, the first two leaders they sent from Ife, Evian killed them. It's in the book, H.F. Marshall's work. Evian killed them at the Ose River. The third person was Oromio. He also worked with the ferrymen. That's what they call them, the ferrymen. Evian told the ferrymen to kill those people that are coming from Ife. But Oromio was smart. He didn't go straight to the ferry place. He first stayed at Oselu. Then later had dealings with the ferrymen and was able to get his own place. But even then, he didn't conquer Benin entirely. And he said he wasn't going to be able to lead them, that only one of their own could lead them. And that's why he had the lady Erinwide, and then they had the child Owemika or Eweka. Anyway, let's finish this fable. Meanwhile, Ogiso's vacation of his throne through his emigration to Ife had led to the assumption of power by Evian, whose regime began the Republican period of Benin's history. Eventually, the Benin notables decided to send a delegation to Ife to recall Ekaladeran to the Benin throne. He, however, refused, but sent his son Oromio, who came to Benin all by himself without being accompanied by any courtiers. At Benin, Oromio was soon disgusted by the fact that the people were always spying on him, especially when he was eating. He therefore decided to leave Benin for home in Ife because they were spying on him when he was eating. You know, the people that come up with this story, they are illiterate, uneducated clowns. And with all due respect, because this is disrespectful to even to the palace. He therefore decided to leave Benin for home in Ife. Why? Because they were spying on him, especially when he was eating. At Ego village, he found a beautiful maiden. This one, they are saying that she's a slave, named Erinwide. His journey to Ife, while Erinwide subsequently became pregnant. When the pregnancy developed complications, messages were sent to Ife, and Oromio's second brother by name Iyama was dispatched to Benin, accompanied by two older brothers. Ife to Benin is not like you take Okada. These people they are talking about were already in Benin. They already traveled together the first time. There's no other material or Benin tradition that are going to hear that they send people on Okada to, sorry, not Okada. They send people very quickly to go and take care of the person that was. Benin to Ife is not close though. Even now, let alone then. Plus, even with this sounds Yoruba. Yes, it does. To be honest, it does. So it says when the pregnancy developed complications, messages were sent to Ife, and Oromio's second brother by name Ihama was dispatched to Benin, accompanied by two other brothers, Iletema and Ilegema, to take care of Erinwide. This explains, according to the informant, the Hamas close relationship with the Oba of Benin. Oromiya's son was later born and he became Eweka the first. Now, let me read something here. The above testimony, apart from introducing the mythical element of Mr. Tortoise, carrying the story of Ekala prosperity at Ife to Benin, as well as the invasion of Ife from Benin, and Odo's apparent voluntary emigration from the city, agrees in main with the stories of the new traditions. It corroborates the traditions which establish an unbroken link between the dynasty of the Ogisos and that of the Obas of Benin. It also provides a plausible explanation for the role of Ife in the establishment of the Eweka dynasty in the same way as the accounts rendered by Edebiri and Iyare. In other words, those 5 versions, they try to present the fact that there's a continuum between from the Ogisos dynasty to the Oba dynasty. Somebody says it was horses they used in those, not Okada, horses. They don't use horses in the forest though. Horses were not very popular in the forest. Where you have more horses, I mean, we had horses, but it was very few and far between, and that's not even, there was no horses. Even with horses, it was a 20-month journey. 20 months means 20 months. That's about 1.5 years, because at the time 13 months made 1 year. All right, we have 13 months in 1 year, 364 days, 4 days a week, 7 weeks, 4 days in 1 week, 7 weeks in 1 month, right, and 13 months in a year. It was 20 months journey. So whether it was horses or Okada, there's no way on earth they will just quickly jump to go and take care of a baby that they're trying to keep before they even get the baby almost away. Where were we? The point I'm trying to make is that they wanted to have Ife and still not have Ife. By the time you get to the account that Oba of Benin now wrote, I read the last one, it's not the same thing with the 5. These different. I read 4, so I'm not reading the other 4 versions. I read 4 already. The 5th version was what I read just now. It's even different. This one has tortoise. That one doesn't have tortoise. The idea basically, and why did they do all of this? In order to create a new identity for themselves, so that they're not seen as folks who are connected to the tailcoats or aprons of the Yoruba. And the only thing we can do today is just to have that recap. I promise the next time we'll come, we'll be talking about the uniqueness or what's the word now? The uniqueness of the prayers that Oba of Benin used to observe every morning, and the language of the court of Benin, how they ran it, and what similarities do we have with with Benin people. Again, just to be clear, we're not looking for family members. We're not saying that Benin people are Yoruba people. That's not true. It's not even historically factual. We're just saying that folks in Benin are changing the history of Yoruba people in order to create something new for themselves. And that's disrespectful. And they should have taken the advice of their king that they should limit that new revision to their own borders, like within their boundaries. And we have a duty to also teach our own history. In fact, and by the way, if you notice, I'm not even telling you what Yoruba people think of Benin. I'm telling you what Benin people say of themselves before the revision, so that it helps us understand the fact that there's no need to be moving the way folks have been moving in recent times. When we come back, we're probably going to read something from Word Price and from Talbot, and that will be next time. But tomorrow, I think what we should do, maybe something that has to do with we'll see. We'll see. But I would like us to listen to a full version of part 1, part 2 of Yoruba-Benin Connection. It's on YouTube, by the way, so if you want to watch it, you can just have a feel. But we'll do that. But tomorrow we'll do either that or something else. I have an idea, but we'll see. But thank you very much for listening to that long recap. I think we spent too much time on the news, so we have a little time to get into this. If you want to ask any questions, please feel free to ask. Someone's saying, does Oba talk by him in Oba? But I think so, yes. The truth of the matter is that even the Oriki Egan said, Oriki Yobani, or Monobanedo. Now, somebody came on Facebook today and said Oba in Benin means light. That does not mean king. So I said, what does Omonobanedo means? I've not heard any response till now. Omonobanedo is a king's son at Edo. That's what it is. But I think they like to display themselves. But but that king tried in Benin. You know the things that the Oba of Benin did in Benin. Obas in Yoruba-Land didn't used to do it. Oba of Benin had absolute powers, and the people were and they are still caught. And by the way, I have something, but nobody has come here to insult me, so there's no reason to read it. Somebody says Ovin Adimula. Yes, that's the son of Adimula. Adimula, who started with Adimula? Is he only now? All the titles, well, no, let me not say all, because I also have Edo titles for him, but many of the titles, most of the titles are actually Yoruba titles. I was going to say something about Tibagwe. Someone said, I wonder who Adimula is. It's the same Adimula. It's just that people like to deceive themselves. But I remember now, I was saying that what he did in Benin, to be honest, Yoruba kings didn't do to Yoruba people. He saw himself, and this is true. This is true, and that's why the Oba moves the way he does. He saw himself as superior to the people, to the point where the people are referred to as Ovians. Not Ovi. No, it's not Ovi Adimula, it's Ovi Adimula. It's OVBI. That's the son of Adimula. Ovien means something entirely different. The people are called Ovien, but he is Ovi. And I'm pronouncing it the way it's spelled. I'm very sure they probably have a different way of pronouncing it. Ovi is OVBI. It means son. Some will tell you that that's where Obi is from, which of course became the title of the king of Onitsha, who interestingly actually left from Benin. Although some will tell you that Ezechima came from Interland, they later on returned. Whichever story they want to hear, that's okay. But the point I'm trying to make is that he's Ovi, but the people are Ovi. And he had absolute powers. Do you know, some of those things may sound a bit insulting. When it was like before 1897 was when the invasion of Benin happened. Before that time, it was only himself and his chiefs and his family members that wore clothes. But I'm not going to spend time on it. Just to explain to you that there are some things that were just is exclusive preserve. Right? It was unquestionable. And in Yoruba-Land, we didn't have absolute monarchies. We had balance of power. But when he got there, he didn't see the people as his equals. He just created absolute monarchy for them. I think they like it. Miora says Oromiyan riding into Benin was the first time the Benin saw horses, according to oral history. No, it's possible. That's not what I was talking about, though. What they read in the book is not Oromiyan riding to Benin. They said when the woman wanted to give birth, they now sent a message to Ife. And they now came back and took care of the baby. That those two people that came to take care of the baby are the ones that are very close to the king. That is not true. It's just a way to explain the closeness of certain people to the king, that they were there when he was born. That's not true. They were there when he was born, but they were not sent because the woman was in own Robbie. Because how can you Robbie for 20 months? By the way, Robbie means labor. I mix you. This is why the Yoruba believe that Oba of Benin authoritarianism prevented many major city-states from developing under Benin, like happened with Yoruba towns and kingdoms. It was authoritarian, like Gogbokpa. If you want to know how bad it was, and it was bad, read this book, Great Benin. It's by Henry Lingroth. Let me for the title. Great Benin, it's culture and horrors, something like that. But it's a very good book. The man, I tell Jenny, no. Yoruba kings could not even. Great Benin is Customs, Arts and Horrors by Henry Lingroth. It's a very voluminous book, so it's not something we're going to be even getting into today. Maybe another time. You should read that book. That man was powerful. And when it was time to do the horrors were horrific. All right, we're just taking things from the comment section before we close. Oh, your match was talking about Tinubu. We'll move there from that one. Oh, he says, Jakuje Buruku. Even his own son, the kind of life that the crown prince chopped. Nobody feature palm for that place. It's quite interesting how they created that structure, because that structure they are still maintaining till today. And the people don't care. I mean, he's their God. And I like it. I respect it. Let me just put it that way. But nobody could do that in Yoruba land. I mean, Yoruba people respect their kings, but there was never absolute monarchy in Yoruba land. In fact, the people that introduced absolute monarchy into Yoruba land were Oyimbos. When they were trying to bring in the indirect rule system. Before them, the king had a lot of powers, but it could be questioned. Baba of Benin was just like I think it's something to do with evolution, and let's just leave it that way. And people that are always insulting us these days, their ancestors used to use the ancestor of something in Benin. Some of them are the remnants. In Tolu, family, Anyway, any questions, any contributions? I think we have about 2 or 3, but we'll make it very quick because I have to run. User is still here. Guys, give me a second. I think this guy has many accounts. Lagos, well done. I saw what you're writing there. Herobodo says, Awo characterize what we had as constitutional monarchy. It's a good way of putting it, yes. Ayodeji has never spoken. I think we just have him there. We'll run. I thought you sent your request. Okay, Roboto is the only one left. We'll have a Roboto then we'll run. Good evening. Good evening.
Hey, good evening, my brother. I didn't know I sent a request though.
I thought as much.
I wanted to talk when you were when it was news.
Let's not go back. Let's not go back to Tinubu.
Section.
Let's not go back to the news, please. So I can run.
No, I wasn't gonna go back. All right. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's fine. I actually have nothing to say. No.
Okay, maybe it was a mistake. All right. It was a mistake.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. All right. Let me thank everybody who has been part of this conversation. Everyone who has tapped 117.2k likes on TikTok. Thank you very, very much. All right. Thank you for your support. So those who have liked, those who have gifted, so the heart me's and the roses and the roses, thank you very much for your generosity. Thanks for us on Facebook and on YouTube. Thanks for being part of it. Oh, I didn't even read anything from Facebook today. Let me see. 1 second. Let's see if we have something from Facebook. We'll just read that. Then we'll close. We spent more time on the news today, but it was worth it. I want to go to 137. Oh, thank you, Koboko. Let's show. Is this okay? So Facebook says every Yoruba has a language spoken in the palace back then. Even Yoruba was a language spoken in the palace back then. Verify. No, you are right. I don't even have to verify. You are 100% correct. The only thing I can do is maybe another session, or you probably just see the details. But you're correct. The language of the courts. Again, just to be clear, the language of the courts was Yoruba in Benin. The language of the courts, not the language of the people who they even spoke their language, but the palace are a different language. And I think people start getting also, it's like this inferiority complex, like how come our rulers are from somewhere else? And like I mentioned the other day, it's not new. It's the same thing you have in England. Okay? The monarchy in England is Germanic, right? And up until First World War, the name was is that name, Saxe Coburg. It was a world war and the Wala of Germany that made them change that name to Windsor. So it's not new that you have the king from another place. They have it in England. You also have it in Benin. Be proud. So you're very correct. Yoruba was a language spoken in the palace. If you don't understand Yoruba, how do you understand all the Oriki, Kabesi? All these Oriki are in Yoruba. In fact, just about every Oriki in Yoruba. All right. Benguse Omojesu on Facebook says, I always say, how can a river give birth to an ocean? So interesting how Benin people would claim superiority over the Yorubas. Oduduwa was the son of... So your first part is correct. That Lamurudu bit is not exactly correct. It was brought much later through the works of people like Sultan Bello. Oduduwa was born in Ile-Ife. His father's name, I don't have to mention, is Yoruba. It is not Nimrod. But here's what I usually tell Christians. If you go by, Jesus, this is another topic. Well, let me just quickly say it. If you go by the table of nations in Genesis 9 and 10 to 11, you can claim Nimrod. And I'll tell you why. Because Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth, right? Shem is considered the father of the Semitic people. Japheth is considered the father, and this is biblical scholarship. So if you don't agree with it, that's okay. But this is biblical scholarship. Shem is considered the father of the Semitic people. It's from him you have Eber, who gave it from whom he then got Abraham. Eber for Hebrew, and essentially the Semitic people. Then you have Japheth, who is the father of the Europeans. And you have Ham, who had 3 sons, Cush, Put, and Mizraim, which is Egypt. No, 4 sons, Cush, Put, Mizraim, and Canaan. Okay? So they are seen as the black nations. Cush, of course, is Ethiopia. Put is Libya. Mizraim is Egypt. And Canaan is Canaan. And so from them, you have Nimrod, right? I think that's from Canaan. So Nimrod was the most powerful person of his generation. So a lot of black people always want to connect themselves with Nimrod. So if you want to do that biblically, you can do that. But it's not that Oduduwa was the direct son. Even if you go by biblical, it would be like son of David, Jesus, son of David, that kind of thing. So the idea of being son of Amor, there's no Amor in Yoruba history. It was something that was made up much later. Thank you very much. Oh, that was quick. I had to cut it short. Madam Olufumi says, the truth and nothing but the truth, straight from Omonoba, thank God. The fight and history revision started in the 1980s. Before that, we had nothing but love for each other. The Benin royal household, The Benin royal household were the first in Ife when Oniade Soja Tadeniawo Adiremi in 1980, led by late Prince Yemi Eweka. I should know I am a grandchild of Oni and I was laid out in 1980. In 1980, I was 19 years old with a lot of memory. I do have a bit of knowledge of the workings of the palaces. I would love if you can independently find out the Madimula and Ufe. Once you read the Oriki, there will be no doubt in your mind about the Benin royal family origin. It talks about their origin. Thank you very much. So we mentioned one earlier, Ovi Adimula. That was the son of Adimula. And yeah, a lot of the Oriki, we're going to have a session for that. Maybe not today. Or just go into the things and make them the way they are. There's even a letter that was written by the Oba of Benin. This must have been 1921 or so? And he began that. I'll find it. Since I mentioned that one, I can quickly just find it. Yeah, it was to Oniade Louis. This was in 1925. He wrote the Oba Eweka the Second. I will talk about this another time. And I'll even show you the letter is here. I'm looking at it right now, but I don't want to show it now because if I do it, I want to now make another session of it. Eweka the Second, the one who was on the throne when a guy ever wrote his book. He wrote a letter to Oba Louis in 1920, not 25, 1920. 1920. And he began the letter by writing, to the Oni of Ife, Ile Ife, my dear father. That was the letter that he wrote. What did he say in that letter? When we come next time, we'll read it together. He said by saying, my dear father. There's no, it's a family. It's just Nigeria that caused all this wala. People are trying to now show that, we have a different clinical, now you write history. It's unnecessary. But Madam Olufumi, thank you very much for that submission. That was really, really good. And it's good to also know that you were there when Obade Sojaderemi passed on. And to be 19 like 1980, oh boy, that will make you 1961. Wow. Okay. Good to know that you were there. We have Prophet Kasali Omatayo. Right on, appreciating your good works. Thank you, sir. JJO says, I can't see what you're writing here, and I really want to read it though. He says, was Oromiyan the son or grandson of Odudua? He was the grandson of Odudua. Oromiyan, thank you for the question. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing it. I think you asked it a while back. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing now. Oromiyan was the grandson of Odudua. He was the son of Ogun. But like I said, you see, if you become really great, they'll just call you the son of the greatest person they can find. It's like if somebody sees me right now, and it had happened to me before. People will just link me to Awolowo. I am not connected in any way. Forget even Romeo is his own direct son. They can call you the son of somebody that they feel you are connected to. It's the same thing with grandsons and sons and grandfathers sometimes. Greatness could make people say, oh, you are the son of. The funny thing is that Romeo was even the last of the grandchildren. That'll show you the gap. Was the last of the grandchildren of Odudua. And that thing also comes up in the story when they say it's the last born. There's the last born. They're always using that story. Anyway, so he's the son of Ogun, but he's the grandson of Odudua. Thank you very much. I think we can call it a day now. We read Facebook, YouTube, and here on TikTok. We didn't stream on Twitter today because we're uploading something on YouTube earlier, which is now good. All right. Thank you very much for being part of today's session on to thank all the folks that came up, everyone who wrote in the comment section. Thanks for engaging, thanks for liking, and thanks for your support. Thanks for your generosity as well. Those who gave gifts, I really appreciate it. And thanks for celebrating my birthday on Friday. I mean, I still remember, it feels good. Thank you very much for that. God bless you. Niora says to today, Kanuri are still indigenous to Darfur in Sudan. Let me read to you what Niora says here. It says, even the Kanuri say they and Yorubas were the same people who migrated out of Sudan to Lake Chad together before the Yoruba ancestors migrated to southern Nigeria. It's not. So here's the problem, and people have to be careful. Yoruba people did not migrate from Sudan to Yoruba land. I will explain something very quickly. And this is, I'll recommend a book, Yoruba, The New History by Professor Akinwumi Ogundiran. Goes into archaeology, goes into many things, okay? Number one, Yoruba people are not from Sudan. That one is very clear. They are located in, if you want to use archaeology, so it depends on what you want to use. If you want to use spirituality, you use Ife. If you want to use collective memory, you use Ife. If you want to use archaeology, you use the confluence, Benue confluence, but there's nothing that places us in Sudan. But is there a possibility that folks from Sudan are part of us? Yes. Why? Because Yoruba people were not just sitting ducks. We're not just people just chilling in the forest. If you read Professor Stevie Banji Akintoye, why the name Yoruba, he made it clear that as at the 5th century AD, this is 2026, he's talking about year 400 and something. 5th century means it happened in the year 400 and something. And to give it proper context, this was about 200 years before Prophet Muhammad was born. And I have to say that because I think it helps us to situate this thing very well. Prophet Muhammad was born in the 7th century AD. It says, as at the 5th century AD, Yoruba people were trading with folks in Mali. And by the way, by the 10th, 11th century AD, some of the beads that came out of Ife, Shagi, Iyun, found their way to the Mediterranean. People traveled. People went out, people came in. Could people have moved from Sudan to Ife? Yes, they could have moved to join us. Not that we came from Sudan. Do you get the point? It's like looking at the story of, let's say, I don't want to use any of those stories. Some of those stories, they're not correct. All those, somebody came from Mecca. The point is this: if people are trading and are traveling from one place to another, it's possible that folks will come. I mean, there are Yoruba people that left and didn't come back. They are in Senegal till today. Some of them in Mali. They are not Yoruba anymore. They now belong to those people. Some of them also came and became part of us, right? So the mistake that people make sometimes is to assume that the people that came now formed the core of Yoruba. No, they did not. They did not. But I'm not going to remove the fact that people could have migrated into Yoruba land. Of course. Why? Because if you start trading internationally in recorded history, as at 5th century AD, by 1352, between 1352 and 1353, you have Ibn Battuta writing about Ife and talking about it being the greatest emporium in the forest. So even if you leave 5th century and you come back and you just come see 13th, 14th century, people might have moved. They might even move it because, I mean, we read some books last week, right? We read Yoruba, The New History by Akinwumi Ogundiran. After the 13th century, Ife had between 70 and 120,000 people in the same place. even today, if you have a place that has 70 to 120,000 people, it cannot be a village. It may not be a city, but so think of it for that time when most people will live in hamlets. To have 70,000, 120,000 people gathered in a place, that's a lot of people. Some of them have come from abroad. But we have to be careful with that Sudan thing. We are not from Sudan. We are from here. And if people come to join us, they will join us, and then, but it doesn't change the history of the people they met. You get. Someone says Yoruba ancestors could have migrated. No, they could not have migrated. So we have to be very careful. We could have. This is 2026. Let me say something before we go. This is quite important. We can't be saying could have migrated in 2026, and I'll tell you why. A lot of work has already been done. This is not 1921 when we had the first book published. This is about 100 years after the first book was published. There have been many history professors who have actually done the work, archaeologists, anthropologists, historians. We cannot be saying could have in 2026. We can say is not. Why? Because we have the research that has been published. And there's no research that we migrated from Sudan. We are from here. Why do people like migration stories? Why do you want to come from somewhere else? We are from here. We didn't migrate from Sudan before 500 BC. We couldn't have. And I'll tell you why this is important. Don't separate yourself from the land. That's the reason for the myth of origin of Yoruba people, saying Oduduwa created land and port sand and everything. That thing is not history, but the idea of myth is that it gives you ownership of the space. Why? So if your forefathers created a myth to attach you to the land, why do you constantly look for something elsewhere? What are you looking for? Oduduwa is not from Mecca, it's from Ife. It was born in Okiora. We are not nomads. And does that mean that we couldn't have? The point is, there is scientific work that has already been done. What I'm saying basically is that we have gone past guesswork. There's nothing wrong with guessing. Maybe it could have been, but that would be okay if no research work has been done. A lot of work has already been done. So what we should do, let me just advise, read the work that has been done, and if after reading those things you now feel like you have a new theory, then propound your theory and work towards proving it. But don't propound theories without reading the work that's already been done. It makes you look as if they just wasted the efforts. But they did a lot of work. So no, we're not from Sudan. We're not from Mecca. We're not from Egypt. We are from here. We are autochthonous. We are from this land. Okay. Africans like migration stories. How? Why do you have to migrate from somewhere? Unnecessary. First one says some are in Cuba, Tobago, that those ones went out later. From Ife, the funny thing is that the migration story that Ife people actually know, and this is the truth, is actually the migration story of people going out of Ife, not Yoruba people coming from anywhere to come and create Ife. It's from people going out of Ife. They welcome people to Ife, but when it comes to migration, it's people going out of Ife to different parts of what we now call Yoruba land, whether within Nigeria, all the way to Togo, whether within Nigeria or in Benin, all the way to Togo. That's the Atakpame. And the Atakpame today still call themselves Ufe. Go and verify. But please, I'm very careful about these things because we should not be, and there's nothing wrong with what you're doing, just to be clear. I don't want it to be like as if I'm saying something. You're not wrong. But the point is, the work that people have done, the work that scholars have done, boya. So why not let's read what they've done, discuss the conclusions they've reached, and then we can now say, okay, maybe this is good. For me, it's good. If it's not good for you, it's okay. Then you can now propound something based on the fact that you have read what they have done. I think that's the better way. New era. Let me not read what you are saying, but thank you very much. I'm a Christian. I believe in our story, but let's not. I get the point. So it helps, and the reason is because so that we don't become floaters. There are people who don't know their origins. Yoruba people we don't appreciate what our fathers did. If being a source, being our source, it does something to the child or to the person. He's not looking for a source. He's grounded. When he knows that the world began. Do you know what people say? If you, let's even forget books. If you listen, we read books, but if you listen to Ife tradition, you never think of migration from outside anywhere. Do you know what they said? Let me tell you what they said. 1886. There's a man called Henry Higgins. Went to Ife. Went to Oyo. They told him that everybody was from Ife. The Alaafin of Oyo told Henry Higgins at the time. David Hindera went to Ife in the 1800s. They told him that his own ancestors were created in Ife. That's the Ife mind, though. Point blank, he wrote it in his own book. And then you also find it in the book by Simi Adebanji Akintoye. They told him point blank that his ancestors, wise people, were created in Ife. And it was after they were created, they were now told to disperse and went, they now populated the earth. That's the Ife story. Not that we moved from everywhere and now gathered. No. People were created here, they were now dispersed into the world. If you think about it, it's such a brilliant idea. You are so grounded where you are that wherever you are going, you know you have a home. That's the point of origin. So I hope we get it. New Era says the English came mainly from German tribes, the Anglo-Saxons with some Vikings on top. I mean, even the Vikings were Germanic people. The Danes, so the Angles, the Saxons, the Danes, the Jutes, they were all Germanic people. But their own story is a bit different. Their English story is different from Yoruba story. The English story, oh boy, especially part 2 class, the English story or the British story is that after the Romans left, okay, I mean, they had their own issues amongst themselves, the Britons, the Celts, and there were no Germanic Kiniko at that time. After the Romans left, one side invited, some people will say invited some of these Germanic tribes. Some people will say they just invaded. But they got in, and over time, they displaced the original owners of the land. And the original owners of the land, some would say there are folks you find in Wales and some parts of Scotland. And then the Angles and Saxons came, and then, of course, they worked with, they say the Celts, and then they created a new identity much later. The point is, it's different from Yoruba history. Yoruba history is not the history of people coming from outside to conquer Yoruba people, to conquer people on the land and now start something new. That's not the story. The story is that we germinated from the ground. And I know it's a myth, but I like the myth. And I'll tell you why. Because it grounds you. But here's what really happened. And I'll tell you why we say we germinate or we came out of this place. When anybody moves out, whether to parts of Kogi State, right, or to places in Ogun State, or places in Togo, or in Benin Republic, or in Lagos, they tell you they came out of Ife. And they're not making it up. There are towns like Ijebu-Remo, there are places like the Aworis. There are different groups that can tell you their family houses in Ife. There are kings in Ekiti that will, visit Ife, the particular family house. That becomes a place where so it's like we went from here, we are going back home. We don't have to look abroad for our identity. Meanwhile, I think maybe that's even why they were able to actually do some very fantastic scientific innovations. They were able to create stuff. They were able to innovate. You have to build because we're not looking around stuff. Ijebu, yes, you have the Obanta, yes. I just took like 2-3 people. I'm taking many subgroups went out of Ife. But you see, also, to be clear, no, we are going to change and that's to be clear, that thing you just mentioned right now, in order to understand it, we have to now go to the archaeology. And the archaeology now goes all the way back to the confluence and tells that there were waves of migrations. And that it is possible that folks who were Yoruba were already there before before people from Ife also got there. Which is the story in Ondo. They were Yoruba people. They were there. Then you have a wave of migration from Ife. They eventually now went there. The difference is that when they got there, they introduced the political structure that they had in Ife. We then helped the people and the economy and change the landscape, because instead of having small villages everywhere, you can now pull resources together and build a solid town. And what you used to call your home becomes your farm. Economy will change. So that, even that alone, even without the story of origins, the fact that the new political order was created by folks from Ife after the order that they had in Ife made everybody say they are also from Ife. There are other reasons, but we'll talk about that some other time. I have to run now. Thank you very much for making today's session beautiful. I really had a great time. I hope you did as well. We're going to listen to our anthems. Nira is just giving me, back to back on YouTube. It says, my father said the Garden of Eden was in Ife. Everything was in Ife. Everything was in Ife. Everything you could think of. Ife people had a very interesting belief at the time. They believed that anybody who died had to go, Totuko would have to go through Ife to the great beyond. As a matter of fact, there are passages to Ife, in Ife. At the end of the day, we're going to get to the point where, and it's not hard, to be honest, we separate the myth from the history. We understand the reason they created those myths, and we appreciate our fathers more. It's brilliant what those people did. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So thank you for being here. We're going to have the anthems, the Nigerian anthem, and then the Yoruba anthem, and then we'll call it a day. Thanks for your presence. Okay.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are proud to serve our sovereign motherland.
ní ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀, ìmọ́lẹ̀ wo ni wọ́kùn lágbára Ọlọ́run, ilẹ̀ Yorùbá ò ní bàjẹ́, Nàìjíríà náà ò ní bàjẹ́, ilé wa, ọ̀nà wa kò ní bàjẹ́ lágbára Ọlọ́run. Wa tó bá dáwọ́ lé ẹ̀ máa yọrí sí rere. May God bless you. May God keep you. May God cause His face to shine upon you. Thank you, Mr. Tunde Okoli on YouTube. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who was in part of today's session on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll see you again tomorrow. We have these sessions every weekday, Monday to Friday, 4 p.m. if at time West African time. So please join us tomorrow at 4. We're going to have a great time together, okay? We're going to start playing music on TikTok, and then we'll bring people in on YouTube and Facebook. God bless you. Do have a fantastic night rest. Odaro. Esho.